So my name is Neha Naik. I am the founder and CEO of three companies. And basically, I live in Houston, Texas with my two young kids. And I got started with entrepreneurship about 10 years ago, basically. Let me just, sorry, this is really going to bother me, a little OCD. And I'm just super excited to be here today and talk about the topic that Daryl is, and everybody here is so passionate about, right? Which is just really looking at quality relationship-based healthcare benefits and how they play a critical role in attracting and retaining top talent. And so before I jump into that topic, I want to give you like a quick, bigger introduction, so to speak. So I have three successful businesses. I've scaled all my businesses to 7 figures. I have a recruiting agency where I primarily work with tech startups and, help them scale by placing tech talent. Then I have a sleep consulting company where I work with families and sleep consultants or moms who want to become sleep consultants and help other families instill a healthy sleep hygiene. And then finally, a data analytics company. This is really where we use Power BI dashboards and we look at how to streamline our clients' data so that they're able to be more profitable and really take home away more without affecting any of their operations or efficiencies. As Daryl said, I'm a member of Forbes Official Council, Forbes Business Council, and I'm located in Houston, Texas. I'm a mom of 2, so I have a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old. And in my free time, I work for a women's shelter. In my free time, I help volunteer at a local women's shelter. And then I also work for Junior Achievement, which is basically a really cool organization that supports local STEM activities. So I do, I'll sometimes do a lecture circuit with them and just really motivate, young kids who don't live in a good environment and really teach them how they can change their lives by becoming entrepreneurs. So that's a little bit about my background. And for today's talking points, I wanted to talk through a couple of things, right? And so the first one is, obviously, we just did the intro, but I also want to talk about how do you elevate employee loyalty through benefits? How is the employee's preferred benefits? How is, like, just kind of a big picture, insightful overview? How do you mitigate job hopping, right, from a benefits perspective? And then how are benefits a catalyst for job satisfaction and commitment? And then finally, how do you have a benefits edge, especially in the job market? And like I said, one of my businesses is a recruiting agency. So people hire me because, they're looking to scale or they're losing employees. And so benefits play such a critical role into this. And we saw this surge really post-COVID, right? When people were looking for flexibility and benefits and just the time with their family. And so this is why I'm really passionate about, any clients that I work with, I always tell them, like, if you don't have benefits, I cannot work with you because I really need, when I place candidates with you, it has to be a long-term relationship, right? It cannot be something that's temporary because I really truly believe that when you're a recruiter or when you're, hiring people, you are impacting global communities. You are changing people's lives. You're giving them a means to earn food and put bread on their table, but you're also allowing them to, allowing them to basically, reach their highest potential. So that being said, it's really important to me that we, really look at benefits as like a really big picture thing that affects day to day, right? And I think that's the biggest goal here of my presentation. Any questions so far on this before I jump in?
Nope, awesome. I think we're good.
Okay, cool. So I think the very first slide I want to talk through is how do you elevate employee loyalty through benefits, right? So when you are running an organization, and right now I have a team of about 45 people, you always have to assess what the correlation is between the comprehensive benefits and heightened employee loyalty, right? And research and data show us that when employees have healthy benefits, when they feel like they're taken care of, right? Whether it's psychological, whether it's emotional, whether it's safety, whatever that looks like, they're going to stay with you longer. They're going to have this sense of loyalty, right? I'll tell you an example. So my husband and I went on trip to Rome. It was our anniversary a couple weeks ago. We went on a trip to Rome without kids. And when I was at the airport and I was making small talk because I wasn't running behind a toddler, and one of the women there, we were just kind of talking and, we were in the same coffee line. And she said, I really love what I do, but I don't really like the company culture. And so I was like, oh, so, she was telling me how she's been with the company for 8 years. And, her husband keeps telling her to find a new job, but she doesn't want to. And I was like, okay, well, Kendall, why don't you want to look for another organization? And she said, their benefits are freaking amazing. I can't find anything else. I'm a new mom. I have a 9-month-old. Yes, I do have to travel for work, but I know that the benefits are taking care of me. They're taking care of my newborn daughter and they're taking care of our family, right? And so that to her was huge. She also really liked how they have a mental health setup where, every week they can talk to a mental health specialist literally on demand for any issues that they're struggling with. This is included as part of their benefits. It's at no extra cost to her or her team members, right? So again, when you talk to people that have been at companies for a long time and, she knows that she'll probably get paid somewhere else, maybe a little bit more than she's making right now. Maybe she won't have to travel, but she also knows that she won't have the same benefits that she does at this organization. And because of that reason, she said that her organization has one of the highest retention for that reason. People don't want to leave. Their benefits are amazing, right? So again, it's really about, understanding the psychological implications of benefits, because when you look at the correlation between benefits and loyalty, the better benefits that you have, you're going to obviously have more loyal employees, right? And so why does loyalty and retention matter, right? Because here I am preaching about retention. So why should companies care about this? Why should you care about this, right? It's kind of like sales, right? It's always cheaper to keep your current customer and keep them happy and upsell them into things than to acquire a new customer, right? And this is something that everybody says. This is not something that I've made up. And accordingly, it's always better for the company, for team morale, when you have employees that stay with you for a long time, as opposed to them jumping ship. And then you're spending time hiring and spending time onboarding and giving them time to get, up to speed, because then you're not just wasting, time and energy and resources, but it's also, bringing your team down, right? And if a team sees that, oh my gosh, like a lot of people are leaving for other companies, you kind of get this FOMO of like, what's going on at these other companies? Like, why are people leaving this company? Should I leave this company too? It kind of forms this weird domino effect of other people leaving too. So that's why I really truly believe that when you have healthy benefits, then you're really going to have increased employee loyalty, right? Which is going to lead to increased retention, lower turnover, and it's going to keep your company culture just really positive and happy at all times. So that's, I think, one of the biggest takeaways from this slide. Then moving forward, right, let's look at, just kind of a review, overview of employees' preferred benefits, right? So gleaning insights from research studies on the most coveted benefits among employees. So if you look at the most research studies, I was supposed to have a case study slide here. I don't really know where it went, but there was like supposed to be a graph here that talks about how, the health and wellness benefits and the actual tangible impacts on the employees' lives, right? I think that's the biggest thing, right? Because when you, especially post-COVID, people started paying attention to work-life integration, work-life balance. Because again, people understood that with kids at home, with spouses at home, and with less commute, they had to stay healthy another way, right? And so we couldn't do much. We couldn't go out all that much. We couldn't, go to the parks anymore, or the mall, and do all the things that would, or gyms that would, allow us to be active. And so there were companies that were really, one of the clients that I worked with, they are a MarTech startup, and they were really encouraging people to go on walks. And they actually sent all of their employees like a little Fitbit, and they would, kind of have teams, and the teams would compete, right? And this Fitbit was part of the benefits, right? So when we would onboard or hire new employees, we would say you get Fitbit. They also had the first Friday off for each month, and this was called Mental Health Day. They still have it. They started this in COVID because they understood that women were working with kids at home. Husbands had to take over more duties because the women and husbands and wives are working together in the same house and the responsibilities were being split. And so that being said, they decided to give everybody the first Friday off each month so that they could have that time to, get errands done or get the, car cleaned or do things that they probably won't get to do on the weekends, right? And so again, this is another example of a benefit, right? Another one of my clients, they used to do like Uber gift cards or DoorDash gift cards for basically people who were working there. So at the end of each month, they could treat their significant other, their family, whoever, out to lunch or dinner, right? That's part of their benefits. And so of course, like health benefits are crucial too, but there's also other benefits that are so important for people because they directly impact their contribution, their health and wellness, and just making sure that people are in touch with things that are outside of work, right? Because work is only part of the puzzle. It's not our entire life. And so as a company, as an organization, when you're in tune with that, that's really going to take you, a long way. I don't know if you've heard this book. It's called The Infinite Game by Simon Sinek. And he really talks about, when you're a leader of a company, you are going to be the compass that guides them, right? And so the way you think about benefits, the way you think about salary, the way you think about growth and promotion, it's really going to impact your retention, your turnover, and how well you succeed. Because regardless of how amazing your product or service is, if you are not there for your people through benefits or through other key initiatives that are good for them, then you're not going to make it. Your company's not going to make it. So I think that was another really important point I wanted to bring up here too. And then job hopping. This is one of my favorite topics, only because this comes up a lot, not because I like it. So again, we need to start thinking about, this greener pastures phenomenon, right? And again, Simon Sinek talks about this in his book, right? So again, one of the biggest thing about, a benefits package and what makes it robust is people shouldn't be comparing what your company or organization has to what's out there, right? The grass is always greener on the other side. We've all heard that saying, right? And that typically is what happens. So when I work with clients, I always look at, what industry they're in, what niche they're in, what are their current benefits, what are their common competitors offering. And I always say like, hey, if you're looking at, up level and add 20 new people to your team, you also need to look at up leveling benefits, because eventually what will happen is, you'll get this amazing employee, they'll start working for you. And then unfortunately, they'll leave you for the greener pasture on the other side because your competitor has a better, benefit, right? And so what we don't want to do is as leaders, we don't want to bring people on, train them, onboard them, coach them, and then lose them somewhere else just because they don't have, you don't have the benefits, right? So I just wanted to share an Indeed employee review, right? So Indeed is historically known for a pretty good work culture, right? I know that they had some round of layoffs late last year, but for the most part, Indeed is known for really good culture. So the review reads, the environment is the best part about working in Indeed. Collaboration data are everything, which I appreciate. Plus the benefits are amazing and very employee focused, right? So again, for this particular employee, the benefits go a long way, right? It's a collaboration and everything else too, but the benefits are great. And so if you don't want to go through the greener pasture phenomenon with your company, then you have to make sure that your benefits are on par and you're doing everything that you can to emotionally, mentally, and physically take care of your employees, because at the end of the day, your employees are your assets, right? And if you lose them and you have high turnover, we already talked about this, then you're going to be at a rock bottom, and you're going to spend a lot of your manpower, a lot of your energy, a lot of your money in just hiring and rehiring and going through that whole circus all the time, which I see my clients do all the time. Okay, sorry. So then here I want to talk about, how benefits act as a catalyst for job satisfaction and commitment, right? So there is a very extensive link between benefits and job satisfaction and how people are really happy there, right? Because again, if you're hiring, if you have the right benefits, then you're going to have employees that are happy because they're taken care of in all aspects of their lives. And I think that's something that a lot of leaders don't think about, right? Like employees are people. They're not just numbers. They're not just people that you can hire and let go anytime you want. These are people showing up for you to drive your mission, your vision, and your values. And so that's extremely critical, right? So again, probing how strong a benefits package can really kindle and nurture employee commitment, right? This is, again, going back to the sense of loyalty, going back to this relationship of nurturing and being transparent, and for the company to really take time to listen to the employee and their needs and their wants, right? And again, establishing the importance of benefits and driving job engagement. So one of the things that I always recommend with my clients is doing anonymous surveys at the end of each quarter. And so the anonymous surveys, they're super easy. They're like 6 questions. It typically takes people less than, I think we typically say less than 90 seconds. It's anonymous. And so one of the first questions we ask is, how would you rate your company benefits on a scale of 1 to 5? 5 being they're amazing, 1 being they're horrible, right? And you want to do this every quarter, right? And then you want to give them like a little area to say why, right? So they say 2, you want to have them say like, I would love to see blah, 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 right? So, reach out to your employees, right? Whether it's anonymous surveys, whether it's having the hiring managers get on a call with them, whether it's your HR department getting on a call with them, but it's your role as leaders to really learn what's working, but it's really important to learn what's not working, right? It's the what's not working. And if you fix that is what's going to allow you to build a company with legacy. And it's going to allow you to go a long way, right? Because we all know, if the strengths are good, that's great, but people really don't leave the company because it's good. They leave because something's not working, right? And so again, as a leader, as a manager, I think it's really the responsibility falls on us to figure out, how can we get people to commit? How can we keep people satisfied so they don't want to leave us, right? How can we do better every single day? And so if you do this every quarter, then you can actually have action plans and put things into effect. I just finished a project with a chemical company in downtown Houston a couple weeks ago, and they were experiencing a really high turnover. And one of the reasons they called us in was like, hey, we're losing people every quarter. And I'm like, do you do any surveys? No. Do you have good benefits? Well, no, we could do better. And I'm like, okay, let's do a survey. So the first thing I did is we did an anonymous survey, and everybody rated the benefits like really poor. I think they got like a 1 or 2. And then everyone was like, the copay was high, the relationship building with the doctor was low. I mean, there was just so many, there were like over 200 people that did the survey. And it took me almost like a week to go through all the results and compile the data. But it really made me understand that it wasn't really the company, right? It was the benefits. And so when you look at data like this, then it really opens your eyes up, and then you can say, okay, like instead of spending $100,000 on recruiting 10 new people, I'm going to spend $50,000 on having amazing benefits so that I keep my employees, right? I'm not paying a recruiter, or I'm not paying, an agency, and I'm not spending all my wheels and, paying an HR person to interview constantly when people are leaving. So I think that's the biggest thing, is you want to make sure that no matter what it is that you do, your benefits are up there, and they're going to keep people with you, and they're going to allow for an amazing job satisfaction that allows people to stay with you for a long time. And then of course, competing in the job market, right? We've already talked about this because the grass is greener on the other side phenomenon, right? So when you have compelling benefits, you will have no issues attracting and retaining top tier talent, right? Because this is, again, really something that's proven. So this is one of the case studies. So there's this company, it's a chemical manufacturer, Chemours, right? And so they really look at benefits, and they make benefits top of their priorities every year. So every quarter, when they have all hands on deck meetings or they have their QBRs, benefits are always talked about, right? And so Mark Newman says, we survey employees every year to improve our working environment from a compensation and benefits perspective. Also, from diversity, equity, and inclusion perspective, we're trying to make sure we tap into the full breadth of talent in our industry. That means, for instance, we're helping people more with college loans. We're offering same-sex marriage benefits. We're providing more family leave for people who have kids. There's clearly an aspect of our benefits package that is evolving to be consistent with their strategy of making Chemours a great place to work. So again, it goes back to, just having that competitive edge, right? So as a recruiter, when I talk to candidates who are looking for a new job or looking to make a transition, to a promotion or whatever, when they hire us to give them any type of feedback on how to have those conversations, I always say, bring up the benefits, right? Because again, when you bring up the benefits, it really tells you the caliber of company that you're going to work for. If you are interviewing with a company who doesn't have good benefits, it's probably not going to work out for you, right? Because if you have a family, or even if you don't have a family, but you want to take care of your mental, physical, emotional health, you need benefits, right? Like this is something that's critical for all of us. And so ultimately, you're going to realize that, yes, the money's great, but I'm not really happy here, and you're going to jump ship, right? And career hopping, not only is it bad for companies, it's also bad for candidates as well, right? When you have a lot of job changes, it's not looked at, people don't look at you in a positive light, right? And so that's our advice, is always look at the benefits. When you look at the benefits, you really understand the caliber of the company. And I feel like, some companies have taken heed of this and really upped their benefits game, but some companies just don't seem to care. And then they really bang their heads on the wall and go, I don't know why I'm having turnover. And I'm like, I mean, the data tells you this, employees are telling you this. If you just don't want to spend the money on benefits or the time to, understand why it's so important, then, you're going to continue going through, unfortunately, this cycle of turnover. So those are really all my talking points. I know I tend to talk really fast, but I did want to pause and ask if anybody has questions.
Neha, I love the fact that you brought up the survey your employees and ask them how well they like their benefits. I find that so rare, and yet it would be so simple and so important. If you're going to spend all this money on benefits, don't you want to know whether it's working to attract and retain top talent? As you go around and you're encouraging employers to do that, how common is it that you find employers are already doing that?
Not very. It's very
rare,
it's
isn't it?
very rare. I mean, when we bring it up, they're like, oh, we've been thinking about doing it. Like I always hear that. Like we've always talked about it. We talked about it last year. And I'm like, okay, so last year, now we're in June, we're halfway through this year, and then it's always like we just don't have typically we hear we don't have the bandwidth. And I'm like, I can type up the survey questions for you. What do you need the bandwidth for? Right. And so typically then once I start pushing back, a lot of times people don't want to do surveys because they don't want to know what's going wrong, right? It's that fear of what they'll find. But I'm like, if you just face it and if you understand what's going to come up, you can actually really be, take the high road, so to speak, and, say, hey, we know that people are happy with the benefits. Our goal for Q3 is to actually just work on a benefits package that's going to be for everybody. So you're keep telling people that you're listening to their feedback, but not a lot of people, Daryl.
And are you finding that in addition to asking employees feedback on their benefits, are they also asking questions on things like culture and pay?
Yes.
Are those common questions in a
That's
survey?
something, yeah. So we typically break it down on like burnout meter. We have a burnout meter. We have a culture, like culture ad and how well they feel integrated in the team. And then we have like benefits. And then also we have one question on what did they think they were doing versus what they're actually doing. So like when you got hired, what were you told you were going to do? And then what are you doing? Is that in line? And then we make them rate it, and then they say like, no, actually was hired to do this, and then now like 2 people have left, and I'm ending, and then we see people go, well, I'm doing the job of 3 people and getting paid 1 salary, right? So then all those little things come out as well.
Nice. So when you recruit people, because you're out there on the front line talking to candidates, how common is it that they want to know right away what are the benefits and what kind of benefits are offered?
Very common. Typically the first conversation, we go over like the compensation, the benefits, the time off, and all that. It's something that even if they don't, I mean, most of the candidates will ask, but even if they don't, it's something that I want to tell them right away. Because I understand people have families, people have, needs and, expectations out of their, just work life, right? So it's something I bring up, but I feel like, especially since COVID, I've had a lot more candidates say like, hey, what are the benefits? What are the benefits? That's something that's really important to me.
One of the things that surprises me is that, no question, the most expensive thing employers purchase to attract and retain top talent are health benefits. But the healthcare industry in this country is very transactional.
Yep.
It's not very relationship based. And yet we've discovered that relationship is almost the most important thing. I'm guessing that when people ask for what benefits, they're not asking whether they're relationship based or transactional, because it's like, well, that's what we just assume. It's all transactional. How impactful do you think it would be in recruiting if an employer offered relationship based benefits? in both attracting and recruiting and retaining?
I think honestly that would be huge. Only because I know that, healthcare gets a bad rap for that reason, right? Like everything is like a transaction. And, I just heard my friend like urgent care is such a waste of time and money, blah, 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 right? But just giving you an example. And so I think if we added the relationship component where you're not just getting benefits, but you're getting benefits that suit you based on what you need, that's not generic, and that's actually going to help you. I think that's really when we start seeing a shift in people's attitude, and we start seeing a shift in people wanting to get help, not just when they need it, but proactively getting help, right? Because now they know that this is a relationship. An example that I like to give is like, if you have a doctor in your family,
Right.
and I'm very guilty of this. I'm like, my aunt's a doctor. And so anytime I'm sick, I'm like, the stomach flu, what do I do? Right. Like, it's because I have the relationship with her.
Right.
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 Instead of going to like, waiting for an appointment for 2 weeks or going to see some random person I don't know, I've built that relationship. And so if once you have that relationship, then you feel more comfortable talking about things, and you're also more likely to get the advice and accept it, right? If my aunt says something to me, just yesterday, she was like, don't go to the gym tomorrow. Like you're dehydrated already, like take it easy. You have a full day of work. But if a random doctor would have said that and I didn't have the relationship, I would have been like, it's fine, I'll be fine. I'm just gonna go anyway and see what happens. So I think that's the key difference.
So I want to open this up to anybody else on the call to either ask Naik or Neha questions, or if you've got comments, your own experience in this topic of how important benefits and specifically relationship benefits are to recruiting and retaining top talent.
Well, you already know my story, Daryl. I don't. For me, I haven't had very good experiences with doctors, and so I've always gone when there's a huge problem. Other than that, my relationships have been more with my nutritionist or my functional type, whether it be a massage or whether it be a therapist, because I do want to focus on my preventative, but I've never found the healthcare system to be helpful. As far as relationship and retaining top talent, I know that is one of the reasons that ties me to Oriant, and the thing that makes me work hard every day and I love is because of the relationship coach that I have with Oriant, and she's so great. And I come from a background of health and fitness, so I expected her to say the normal things. She didn't. Our conversations have been so great monthly that I don't want to leave because I don't want to leave Shell. And that's kind of my story on relationship and implementing relationship into the companies.
Nice. Thanks, Tommy. Anybody else?
And Daryl, I guess, Neha, when I think about, the preventative element of the psychological space, a lot of people will leave things to the 11th hour. So whether it's, I've got TMJ or I'm an executive, I'm carrying that extra 15, 20 pounds, I'm not sleeping, I don't eat well. And then they go to the physician who says, okay, yeah, your blood pressure is a little bit up, but I need to have you go see someone. And oftentimes that gets mitigated just by them having a conversation about the holistic frame. When you are recruiting for different sectors, are you looking at the psychodemographics in recommending what are the best benefits for the age band and, whether it's a 24/7 service, those types of things?
Yes, really good question, Roxanne. Thank you for asking. So I don't really, tell my clients the types of benefits to get for their employees. Typically what I recommend is they do that study internally, because I'm coming in as a contractor and I don't necessarily know what the demographics are for the company, but I will tell them, just how the trends are going in the benefits market. Like, for example, fertility benefits are on the rise, paternity, maternity benefits on the rise. So I tell them, if you have, employees that are, either newly married or going to start conceiving and starting families soon, then you want to start thinking about that, right? Otherwise it just really depends. But I don't go in and tell them, what types of benefits they should offer. I just, typically I get asked questions like, what's something that would get people to come here versus go to this company, right? And what's something that's good for the mental, emotional, physical well-being of the employees? And then I'll say, hey, here's the top 10 things I strongly recommend you look at. And then they kind of go in and dissect that, with their legal team, their HR team, et cetera, and their finance team, and then make that decision.
Okay. Yeah, because when I was working in the employee assistance world, generally every sector had different bands of, what were some of the top key cost drivers that would keep people away from work. And when we would do analyses of the long-term, short-term, incidental absences, presenteeism, and all those things, what happened is that that would become glaringly obvious what kinds of things were needed. And talking about relationship, if you think about it, if in reference to whether they had a coach or someone intervene. Let's say it's a family member. You talked a lot about having younger children, Neha. So sometimes what the thing would be, it would maybe a conversation about, what maybe benefits would be available after school for young children. That would be, they would be connected with someone relatively early. That would mitigate the person taking time off because they didn't have the right resources. So that's the one thing that we found is, with, I worked with Monash Health for 20 years, is that we could kind of talk to HR and, the health and wellness committees to recommend certain things that they should be implementing more. And at the end of the day, if relationship, we would track the amount of days that people will actually lose less work or stay with an employer if they had the relationship up front from the preventative lens. So that's just fascinating to hear that you come with what's trending up, but maybe not maybe industry specific.
Correct.
Yeah.
Nice. Vidar, you jumped on after we started the presentation and did not get a chance to introduce yourself. Would you be willing to share your background and any comments you've got about this?
Sure. I have run conferences on healthcare for 40 years, and every year we say we're 3 to 5 years away from a real breakthrough in healthcare, and it's never happened. But we're still at it, and we acquired the Validation Institute in 2018 or so to sort of validate the marketing claims of healthcare providers. But I'm always surprised at how hard it is to get the attention even of the CFO for their second or third largest spend. And that's still a mystery to me this day, but as I've been for the last 40 years, I'm hopeful that the Consolidated Appropriations Act and the fiduciary responsibility will now make the CFO and the CEO have to pay as much attention to their healthcare spend as they do their 401k spend. But so far it hasn't happened. They're in denial. They say, oh, my broker's taking care of this. And it's not their broker that's going to get sued. It's the CEO and the CFO and the board of directors that's going to get sued. So I guess we just have to wait for the Department of Labor to sue some CEOs and CFOs, and then maybe we'll see a little action.
Well, Chris Deacon was telling me the other day that she's already hearing from class action lawyers who are building class action lawsuits. I think that's what's going to hit the fan. When a major employer gets sued by their own employees for the fact that they're not being a good fiduciary, that's going to hit the fan.
Yeah, well, I hope so. It just hadn't happened in 40 years. So, but I actually am as hopeful as ever in that the laws are in place. These aren't just executive orders. And interestingly enough, both the left and the right seem to be supporting this.
Right.
So, and that's amazing that this even got through with the lobbying muscle of the insurers. That it was just surprising to me that it got through. So I am more optimistic now than I've ever been. but it's not. It's like changing the economy of Germany. You know,
Yeah.
this is a battleship.
We can thank Cynthia Fisher for all of her efforts to get some of those regulations passed. Tell me, Vidar, do you have any comments or questions for Neha, or comments about this idea of recruiting employees and how important health benefits are, or what kind of benefits are helpful in recruiting employees?
Well, I signed on late, but I'm also majority owner of a conference company that has about 150 employees, and it has had no employee leave for a competitor in the last 5 years, not one. And when you go to the Glassdoor rating for that company, and I'm not the CEO, somebody else is the CEO, 100% of 150 employees support the CEO. And he on the employee meeting, the last annual employee meeting, he featured Simon Sinek, and so that he's very aligned with the talk, and I think that sort of personal relationship makes a big difference. So I see it firsthand, and his employees, though they're fully insured, and these are a lot of people with advanced degrees, PhDs, MDs, and they're in the Boston area, and they think that Mass General, Brigham and Women's is the best place in the world, and it's going to be hard to in a way say to them that maybe it's not always the best choice.
Thanks, Vidar. Anybody else on the call have any questions for Neha, or any comments about their own experience in recruiting and retaining employees and benefits? Matthew?
Yeah, thank you, Neha. Just it's interesting, and thank you, Vidar, by the way. We did win an award through the Validation Institute in 2020, so thank you for what you do, and for the award, actually. And then on another note, so our company, Solve Global, we actually provide primary care musculoskeletal, so relationship care, where you build relationships, and we're actually walking with people along their journey through life, helping them with their musculoskeletal needs. But the physical therapy practice I also own. We have 18 employees, and what we have done is we give folks a healthcare allowance, and then we counsel them on how to utilize those dollars in regards to purchasing, establishing a relationship with a DPC doctor, and then talking about Sedera for catastrophic. But as I listen to you, I go, oh, I'm a little nervous. I don't know if that's enough, because we can't afford, we haven't been able to afford a health plan by contributing dollars and giving people as much of a value that way as we can give them cash and then teach them how to use it. But I get a little nervous when I hear you talk about the benefits, because we're not really, we provide a 401k, we provide a healthcare allowance, we provide continuing education, but we don't provide traditional benefits because we give cash and counseling. So I'm just curious as your thoughts on that, and you made me a little nervous, so I have to ask questions.
Yeah, well, sorry to hear that. Are you having any turnover right now, or?
No, we really don't have a lot of turnover in regards to leaving for salary and benefits. But a lot of our people, they have a spouse that have benefits. They just love the cash.
Right.
And we give people the option. We say, well, what if we offered a benefit? Would you rather have that? No, we'd rather have the cash because we're getting our care through our spouse. But I don't know.
Yeah. I think that's a couple of things, right, that come to mind. So, you might the good thing is you might be then attracting talent that is okay with not getting benefits because they have, a spouse that's getting them benefits. I think when you have to start really feeling nervous is when you do decide to scale up, right? And when you do have to expand kind of the pool of candidates. So let's say you're going from 18 people right now to 50 to 60. You're not going to be able to scale quickly without benefits, right? Because there's only so many people that are going to be okay with cash. You're going to also have people that are interviewing that they have a spouse and a family and they're the primary breadwinners. And so I feel like that's really when I think for now, if you're not having turnover and you're not having people kind of moonlight or double dip or anything like that, then there's no reason to be concerned about. But I would say just you want to think about scalability here. And so the minute you're going to scale up because of demand, with your clients, your practice, then you want to start thinking about, okay, now how do we incorporate the traditional benefits, so to speak, so that I am able to, hire high caliber talent, right? Because at the end of the day, you are also going to want to draw a balance between hiring people that can truly take your organization to the next level versus hiring people that are okay and will do okay. And so the people in the later category might be the ones that are like okay with the cash, right? So I feel like it just really, you have to kind of strike a balance there. And I think that balance has to come when you start to, really scale.
Yeah, no, thank you. And I think it's very interesting because I think we draw talent because of how we do things. But yeah, I think there are some in the talent pool that would go, I'd rather go somewhere where I can get a traditional benefit. Daryl, I'm really curious as to your benefit offerings at Orient with what you do.
We do something very similar, Matt, in that we allocate an amount of money into the catastrophic bucket for a health plan. And we offer our employees a traditional health plan that they can choose from. They have to pay up a little bit, like most employers. They're not going to pay 100% of the plan. But for those employees who say, well, gosh, because I have the freedom to do with that cash what I want, I'm going to choose to go with a sharing program and put the difference in my pocket as cash. So I'm a firm believer that choice is an incredibly strong recruitment strategy. And by allowing my employees to choose whether they want to put forth a little bit of employee contribution and get a traditional plan, or whether they want to take money in their pocket and be on a sharing program, that's their choice.
Yeah, thanks.
Anybody else have any questions before I ask another question? Kim, did you have a question or a comment?
A little bit of both. Neha, I agree with so much of what you shared and have seen it play out, the good, bad, and ugly. I was really pleased to hear you talk about assessing both what is working and what isn't working. What I've noticed is that executive teams tend to have a preference towards one or the other. I only want to hear about what's working and not what's not working, or I only want to hear what's not working and I don't really care about what is working. And I also completely agree with your point of you've got to measure it. You need to do surveys and have that become part of maybe employee engagement or whatever, so that you have a baseline and can measure those things over time. In addition to a survey instrument, I'm curious what advice you would have to an executive team that is perhaps more oriented towards just the positive or just the negative, and really taking a more comprehensive view of benefits. And even to Matthew, your example of there are some constraints involved in our situation. How do we make the most of the good and mitigate the negative?
Yeah, I think, the biggest thing, Kim, here is that, thank you for asking the question. That's a really good question. And I actually, find that, a lot of people are like, well, we know what's working. And I'm like, do you know what's not working? And then typically they just list out one thing that's not even really like a big deal. It's like something really little, right? And I'm like, no. And I think the biggest thing for leaders to know is, we all start businesses for a reason, right? Like we all want to scale our businesses. We all want to affect not just 10, 20 lives. We want to affect thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of lives. And so when you start to, the way I approach this conversation with my clients is, let's go back to your vision. Let's go back to your why. Why did you start this business, right? Now you're already here. What's it going to take you to go to that next level? You already know what's working. So for you to go to that next level and now go from working with thousands of clients to hundreds of thousands of clients, or hundreds of thousands of clients to millions of clients, now you need to really see how you can scale the organization, right? So how can you scale, right? You cannot scale unless you know what's not working. If your team is burnt out, if you have lackluster culture, if you have turnover, if you don't have good benefits, if you're losing clients, if you're having a hard time finding clients, or your clients are unsatisfied, you're not going to be able to scale. That's just the bottom line. So unless you know what's not working, you're not going to be able to go back to your vision and say, this is why I started this business, right? And so always taking a 20,000 foot view of going back to your why, again, what Simon Sinek says, but then also incorporating your vision and how you can then be that leader, that, you know, kind of that compass, and drive back to that. Because a lot of times we get siloed in, right? As entrepreneurs, we want to get boxed in. We just want to have this little horse vision and just keep going. But then unless you take that off, you're basically putting yourself in a box and limiting yourself, and you're not going to be able to expand. And so that's when I typically use that, you know, analogy, then typically it's like, okay, like that makes sense, right? Like I understand that, but it's always gotta, you know, come from a place of, you know, you've got to be heart-centered. You've got to care about your team, your people, because again, you could have the best of products, and, you know, history has shown us like amazing products have failed because leaders have decided not to pivot or not to really take care of their companies. And then products that we thought wouldn't stick around have, you know, just made lots of money. So it really just goes back to company culture, company benefits, and how well the leaders are taking care of their people. And you're not going to know how to help them if you don't know what's wrong.
Neha, I've got a question for you, kind of to close things up because we're almost out of time. One of the things that, as I get in front of groups of CEOs across the country, and I talk about recruitment and, you know, to retain employees, I encourage them to build into their benefit structure a classification of tenure. And they seldom have thought about that before, but I mean, there's no reason you can't discriminate in your benefit offering based on classifications. And one of those classifications is tenure. So you can actually bump up the richness of the benefit as employees stay longer with you. Is that something you see very often, or is that something that you would recommend as a way to better attract and retain top talent?
I see tenure specifically as it relates to like PTO and out of office. So if you've been here for this long, then you get more added days. We've all, I think, kind of seen that. I don't typically, unfortunately, see it with benefits. I think that would be a fantastic idea, only because I think, again, you know, there's that give and take, right? And so if employees, you know, understand that you respect what they're doing and how long they've been there, then they're going to give back to you more, right? It's, you know, if you show up to someone's house and, you know, they bring you a present versus you bringing them a present, it makes you feel awkward. You're like, wait, but I'm here. Why are you giving me a present, right? So it's that, you know, triggering that psychological point where it's like you're giving them something. And so in exchange, the employees are now going to give you something back, which is their loyalty. And so if you're able to kind of, you know, do that by tenure, then say like, okay, after 3 years or 5 years, you're going to now have, you know, more health benefits, or you're going to have less of a copay, you're going to have an extra benefit, or whatever that looks like. Yeah, I feel like that would be a fantastic idea.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Neha, for being with us today. This has been a fun conversation. I appreciate everybody's input and thoughts. Again, we'll do this meeting again. The next one will be, I think it's July 7th is the first. Yeah, July 7th is the first Friday in July. So 2:00 Mountain Time. We hope to see you back, and invite other employers that you know to join us. But again, thank you so much, Neha.
Thank you for having me. It was nice to meet you all. Have a good weekend.
All right. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.